Adrian Vale's signature was still wet on the divorce papers when Elena finally found her voice. "I didn't tell you the whole story," she whispered. Her words were soft, but they sliced through the silence of his penthouse-like glass. Adrian froze mid-motion, the fountain pen still in his fingers. The city lights flickered behind him, painting the room in gold and sorrow. He didn't look up. "Elena," he said, his voice glacial, "there's nothing left to say." But Elena stepped forward anyway. Her hands were trembling, he noticed, even though he tried not to. For months he had trained himself to look right through her, to feel nothing. But it was impossible now. Not when she stood only a breath away, looking like she had been unraveling slowly while he wasn't watching. "I know you don't believe me anymore," she said, swallowing the crack in her voice. "I know I've given you every reason to stop trying. But please, please just listen this once." Adrian's jaw flexed, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. "I listened for 3 years," he said. "You never talked." Elena flinched. She couldn't deny it. She had been the one to build walls, high, heavy, impossible walls, even around the man she loved. But she had reasons, real reasons, reasons she had buried so deeply even she sometimes pretended they weren't there. "Elena, sign the papers," Adrian said flatly. "It's cleaner this way." Clean. That word again. He wanted their ending immaculate, surgical, as if the last 3 years hadn't wound themselves around every part of their lives. But she wasn't ready to let him cut the cord. Not yet, not when the truth, ugly, painful, necessary, was finally clawing its way out of her silence. Her voice barely came out. "The baby wasn't mine." The pen dropped. Adrian's head jerked up, his expression fracturing, shock, confusion, and something darker mixing behind his eyes. "What did you just say?" Elena clasped her hands together to stop them from shaking. "The pregnancy. The one you thought I lost. The one you thought I lied about. The reason you said you couldn't trust me anymore." She inhaled sharply. "It wasn't mine." His eyes narrowed. "Elena, what kind of game?" "I was a surrogate." Silence detonated between them. The hum of the city disappeared. The air stopped moving. Even the clock on the wall seemed to forget how to tick for several seconds. Adrian stared at her, disbelief slowly hardening into something sharper. A surrogate? He stepped closer, eyes drilling into hers. "For who?" Elena's lips parted, and the answer tasted like betrayal, even after all this time. "For my sister." Adrian's breath left him in a slow, dangerous exhale. Of all the things she could have said, an affair, a mistake, a lie, this was the last thing he expected. He had spent months believing Elena had been unfaithful, keeping secrets, hiding a pregnancy only to claim she had lost it. He remembered the cold hospital room, the sterile words, the distance in her eyes, the way she refused to let him hold her or help her. He thought she didn't want him. He thought she didn't want them. His voice finally returned, low and sharp. "Why didn't you tell me?" Elena looked down at her hands. "Because she asked me not to. She couldn't carry a child, Adrian. And she didn't want anyone to know, not her husband, not our parents, and especially not you." Tears swelled in her eyes. "I agreed because she was desperate. And because we'd been married less than a year. Who becomes a surrogate in their first year of marriage? How was I supposed to explain that to you?" Adrian's throat worked as he swallowed, but he kept his face unreadable. "You explain it like a partner. Like someone who trusts their husband." She closed her eyes. "I was afraid you wouldn't understand. Try me," he snapped. Her voice broke. "You were already distant. You never talked about kids. You barely talked about your past. I thought if I told you, you'd think I wanted a reason to avoid having a family with you." Adrian's heart stuttered. She had no idea that the reason he never talked about children was because he secretly wanted them too much. Because the thought of being a father terrified him after the way his own had failed him. Because he didn't want to disappoint her. He looked away, jaw clenching. "Elena, do you have any idea how badly it hurt to think my wife was hiding a pregnancy from me?" "I do," she whispered. "And I hated every second of hurting you. But I promised my sister, Adrian. She thought her marriage would fall apart if the truth came out. I thought I could handle being caught in the middle. I thought I could separate what I was doing for her from what it would do to us." Her tears spilled over. "I was wrong." Adrian's breath shook as he exhaled. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing away from her as if putting distance between them would help him think. It didn't. The room suddenly felt too small, the truth too large. "Elena, why now?" he asked without turning. Why tell me this after signing the divorce papers? Because I thought losing you would hurt less if I convinced myself we'd never stood a chance. Her voice wavered, but when you signed, when you didn't even hesitate, I realized that letting you go while you still believed the worst about me would be the biggest regret of my life. Adrian turned slowly. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't manipulative. She was shaking, eyes raw with everything she'd finally let herself feel. It was the most honest he had seen her in years. Elena, he said quietly, look at me. She lifted her eyes, searching his face for some sign, anger, forgiveness, anything. But Adrian Vale was a fortress she had cracked too late. You think telling me this changes everything? He asked. No, her whisper barely reached him. But it changes the truth. He stepped closer. One step, then another. Her breath caught. When he was close enough that she could hear the low, steady rhythm of his breathing, he spoke. Why did your sister never claim the child? Elena flinched again, and this time Adrian felt the dread sink into him like a stone. She never got the chance, she said, voice trembling. She died in childbirth. Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. And the baby, his voice cracked despite himself. Elena's answer came softly, painfully. I'm raising her. His breath stopped. Elena, she's mine now, she said. My sister made me promise. And I kept that promise. I've been keeping it alone because I thought you'd never want a child that wasn't yours. Her chest shook with a sob. But she's a part of me, Adrian. And I couldn't give her up. The truth hit him like a tidal wave. All this time, he thought she had grown distant, cold, secretive, but she had been grieving, protecting, surviving, shouldering a burden no one should have carried alone. Elena, his voice was barely a whisper. I know it's too late, she said. I know I ruined everything. But I needed you to know that I wasn't unfaithful. I didn't betray you. Her tears fell faster. I was just trying to save my family, and I lost my husband in the process. She turned toward the door. But at least now you know. She reached for the handle. And Adrian's hand closed around her wrist.